Hello and welcome back to No Bullshit. Today we return to talking about this terrible health scare that's plaguing the nation and the world, particularly one city up in the Northeast that has been hit especially hard in the United States. I'm of course talking about New York City, the biggest city we have in this country, and it's really been suffering hard under these terrible circumstances. Now, this city is already built to be attracted to bad things like this. Viruses can spread easily in big cities, and New York is most stacked one. It's got tall buildings, small streets, people crowding in the subways. It's very unfortunate, but it's a harsh truth we have to live with. But in addition to that, it's not just the infrastructure and the way it was built and the nature of this virus that's causing New York City to go so bad. It's actually being made worse by the terrible Democratic leadership there. This has been a liberal-run city for a while, and right now in charge is Mayor de Blasio, who has really been duffing up his response and taking things to a whole new level. He's known on this show because we've referenced him before in a few clips where back in February he was encouraging his citizens to go to Chinatown and celebrate these events despite this whole health sickness thing scaring us and hanging over our heads. Now, granted, February was much earlier along. There wasn't as much of a scare back then. Not many places were closing down, but you certainly got to take some caution, some precautions, because I don't think we should be doing exactly what these people are saying. This Democratic mayor was actually literally encouraging people to go out into Chinatown, into this small old part of town to gather into large numbers despite a disease going on. I think you could see why that's a bad idea. And this is just one in a number of things that de Blasio has messed up. He's been saying the wrong things, giving out wrong numbers, and just in general, running his city poorly. Now, this was back in February, and since then we've seen some other quotes of him messing things up and just kind of being a biased Democratic hack that is really ruining the city and making the problem there far worse than it needs to be. And that's what brings us to this news story. What's going on here is a similar situation because over time we've noticed that de Blasio has encouraged certain groups to gather if they're favorited by the left-wingers. We, of course, just talked about Chinatown, Chinese and Asian Americans gathering. That's okay. And then there was another religion, and if you look at this tweet, you can see de Blasio encouraging the Muslim people to gather and to do their thing. Still be safe, but you could still do something. You know, you could still go out and do this and that as long as you're in the right area, in the right group. But now in today's story, we're talking about a Jewish community that's being attacked, and we've seen a rather interesting tweet come from de Blasio that sparked this whole controversy. Basically, it's okay for those other groups to gather, but de Blasio is really locking down on the Jewish people for some reason. I'm not sure what it is, but there has been a notable amount of anti-Semitism in the Democratic Party for a good long while now. They've always kind of gone against them and favored the other religion that really hates Jewish people and has been aggressive after them for generations. And then in addition, we've always known that the left has been anti-Israel, the Jewish home state. They've even said such crazy things as they want to wipe out the Jewish home state, which is rather ironic because you got to consider these are the same people calling people like myself and other Republicans. They call us 1940s Germans. They act like we're Germans from World War II, which of course were the most anti-Jewish group ever. But they want to call us that, even though I'm in support of them. We all support Jews and this gathering thing in Israel and this and that. But they're anti that, but somehow we're 1940s Germans. Very interesting, but not the first and most hypocritical thing about today. As I mentioned with de Blasio, he is treating certain groups different ways, and that's what's noticeable and what's troubling with this story. I'm not actually here to encourage people to gather. I know this event that he's talking about was some sort of, I think, a Jewish funeral or something. A lot of people were supposed to gather there, so it totally makes sense to discourage that if you're leading the town. I'm not saying people should be gathering. It's just very interesting to see how certain groups get treated in certain ways. So that brings us to today's story. Let's go and check out this article called De Blasio Warning to Jewish Community Sparks Backlash in Latest Controversy Over These Measures. And if you scroll down, you can see this is a picture of de Blasio on a nice little walk here. He's out in, I believe, Central Park or something. And this is an interesting contradiction too, because this is the kind of mayor and this is the kind of style we know liberals say it's okay when we do it. So they tell people to do one thing and they do another. And in this situation, that's what's happening because de Blasio is going on this nice long walk. Sure, he's got a mask on. Sure, he's being safe. There's nothing wrong with taking a walk. But this is the same guy who's trying to lock everyone down and keep this country shut down indefinitely. And he's also telling these other people not to meet. So Very hypocritical, very double standard, classic. It's okay when liberals do it. That's besides the point. That's another sort of hypocritical thing. Let's get to the article. New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio is being accused of singling out his city's Jewish community after a Brooklyn funeral was broken up by police for allegedly violating social distancing requirements being enforced during this pandemic. The funeral of Rabbi Chaim Mertz in the Williamsburg section of Brooklyn appeared to draw a massive crowd as images of the scene appeared on social media. De Blasio even went to the site of the funeral with the police before posting a tweet that touched off the backlash. Here's the tweet now. It says, "My message to the Jewish community and all communities is simple. The time for warnings has passed. I have instructed the NYPD to proceed immediately to summons or even arrest those who gather in large groups. This is about stopping the disease and saving lives, period." Okay, a very stern stance and understandable too. I just think the problem again is the contradiction, the singling out of the Jewish people, kind of telling them not to do something that you told this other group was okay. I mean, you totally have proof, like this tweet encouraging this other religious group to gather. We have the Chinatown quotes on clips and video. I've done that in other videos. I mean, this is all out there, but for some reason, de Blasio wants to lock down on Jewish people. Not sure what that's about, but it's very interesting because he's also in a city. I didn't get to mention this yet, but there's a lot of Jewish people in New York City. This is like the main place they came into when they immigrated into our country over the years, and they've spread out to other places. Sure, they're all over the country. Miami and LA also have big communities, as do other cities, but New York City is kind of the big one. This is where high-profile ones have come from over the years. Woody Allen. I'm just thinking of comedians and actors. You know, Woody Allen, Larry David, Jerry Seinfeld, all New York Jews, and it's a great place for them to have this history, and they have a lot of community there, and that's why it's super troubling that the mayor of the biggest city, probably with one of the biggest Jewish communities in the country, and he's going against them pretty blatantly. Now, if you take this tweet on its own, it might just seem like we're talking about social distancing and being safe about the virus, but if you put it together with all the other stuff he said, you could tell different groups are being treated differently. This group isn't protected according to the left, according to their SJW identity politics. There's only another religion that gets protected, and then other minorities too. Chinatown gets protected. The country, that Far East country those people are from, is protected. The Middle Kingdom's good. Lots of our enemies are good. You know, the communists are okay. The authoritarian dictators in the Middle East, they're all okay. Everyone's okay except for apparently American conservatives, Jewish people, straight people, and this just the generalized white people are bad kind of narrative. The mayor's response drew swift condemnation. While critics did not appear to dispute whether the funeral was a violation of social distancing rules, which call for staying at least 6 feet apart and limit large gatherings, they questioned de Blasio's language toward the city's Jewish population over the incident, months after a rash of anti-Semitic attacks in New York metropolitan area. New York City Councilman Kalman Yeager, who is Jewish, accused de Blasio of treating Jews differently from other populations. Okay, this is getting interesting. Now we're going to read a tweet from an actual, I believe, New York Jewish person named Yeager, and he has some words to say. Let's see what this guy says. "Mr. Mayor, your words are unacceptable. To condemn our entire community over one group of people is something you would not do to any other ethnic group, and I know you long enough to know that you know this." Well, a pretty big condemnation from Kalman Yeager. He's speaking for a lot of people in that area. And yeah, I could see where they're getting treated differently. We went over the other two groups that had this issue, and they were treated much differently, encouraged even, despite the sickness. And then now this community gets called out, the whole community, which is weird for him, de Blasio, to mention, hey, my message to the Jewish community. It seems a little odd. I know if I said anything like this, like if I tweeted something like, hey, Jewish community, do this or that, I would get totally hung up and totally probably fired, kicked off the website. People would probably come to my house and protest. They'd close my bank accounts. PayPal would fire me. I mean, every single thing bad would happen if I mentioned anything. I already get called anti-Semitic, and I've never said anything negative about them besides a few small jokes like I've joked about everyone over the years. But now we've got the New York City mayor who's condemning the whole group, and somehow that's cool because he's a Democrat. Washington Examiner executive editor Seth Mandel also accused de Blasio of being harsher against Jews than he would be against others. Here Seth tweets, "You low-life pretentious bobblehead. There's only one community you would address this way, and it's the one that just went through a pogrom on your watch, as you let it happen. the Jewish people will survive your term in office despite your best efforts. I'm Yisrael Cha. What Seth is bringing up is these sorts of attacks been going on in New York City, and it's a big problem there too because Jewish people are getting targeted, which is very unfair, very terrible, and they're getting attacked by different people. But the problem is the people attacking the Jews are a certain minority group that gets protected. Now, since it's minorities doing this, they're going to be quiet about it. The Democrats aren't going to mention it. The Democrats are in charge of the city, so they're going to tell the cops to hide it away, not bring it up in the news. But Seth is bringing it up. The last tweeter was bringing it up, and it's valid information because we want these people and all people in New York City to feel as safe as possible, as the way it should be in this whole country. And that's just the way actual equality and fairness works. It doesn't matter. You don't prefer certain groups, which seems to be the left-wing angle. They seem to prefer these certain groups while bashing down the other ones that we mentioned before. But no, we're talking about real equality. We're talking about real fairness. Everyone on the same playing field, line up, have to have responsibility, and you can't cover up for people you like, and you also can't attack people you don't like. We got to be fair. We got to be balanced, and that's the real goal here. Anti-Defamation League CEO Jonathan Greenblatt also condemned de Blasio. He said, "Hey, New York City Mayor, there are 1 million Jewish people in New York City. The few who don't social distance should be called out. But generalizing against the whole population is outrageous, especially when so many are scapegoating Jews. This erodes the very unity our city needs now more than ever." Another great point. I mean, I never thought I'd be siding with someone on the ADL, and I'm not trying to white knight Jews either. I mean, I'm not trying to kiss anyone's ass today, but this is what I mentioned before. There's a large population of them there, and if they don't social distance, that's of course wrong. But the problem is singling them out when you've encouraged other groups to gather. And in addition, we've got this new line of sort of addressing the whole Jewish group because of one funeral, one event that happened in the city. That doesn't mean the whole community was involved. That doesn't mean the whole community across the country was involved. It just means one group had to decide to go to an event one day, and they decided they want to risk it. I mean, that's not the smartest thing to do, but we're not supporting that. We're here to support the group overall and also the New York City overall. They deserve better there. New York City is a fine place. I visited before, and their mayor is really messing up. So I hope maybe there's some New Yorkers out there watching, trying to pay attention, trying to see how bad their mayor has gotten and how bad the Democratic Party has treated their city. It's time to vote these kinds of people out and at least start combating their bad ideas in the public squares. With all that said, that about wraps up today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Make sure you comment your thoughts on everything below. I'll be responding and liking and reading your video suggestions in the comments below. Hit the like if you enjoyed this video, and until next time, you guys have a good day.